Welcome to the Back to Basics Nutrition Program. My name is Christy Butler, and I will be leading you through today's presentation on our Mediterranean-inspired diet. So today we're going to be going over a few topics, and first I want to just make sure that you have everything in order before you get started on this program. So first, make sure that you download the Get Healthy app on your iPhone or on your mobile device, and also access that on your desktop so that you can properly complete your questionnaires, your intake forms, and set goals for the 6-week-long program. On the Get Healthy app, you can also find the many documents that have been uploaded to the Back to Basics program. You'll find a week 1 recipe guide in there that will give you a nice template to work with when you're choosing your meals. You'll have the Back to Basics food list so you know exactly which foods to choose from, along with some portion guidance on I think the 3rd and 4th page of that document. There should also be a My Vision worksheet that Rebecca and I would both like you to complete before the end of week 1. So on for our agenda today, we are going to highlight the many benefits of the Back to Basics nutrition program. I'm going to review all the foods that you can enjoy on your journey to optimal health and discuss some of the tools provided that will support you all the way through. So you can use this as much or as little as you want, but you have 2 nutrition experts that are really at your fingertips anytime that you message us or upload your photo food log, any of your metrics. We are able to access that and support you all the way through this program. And finally, we encourage you to set goals and expectations for yourself for the first week of this program. So what can you expect after just 6 weeks on the Back to Basics program? Now, this is a program driven by food quality more than anything. So we're going to be fueling your body with anti-inflammatory foods, foods that help you heal from the inside out. There's not just one food that is specific to that. It's really taking out a lot of the inflammatory foods and putting in healthy fats like omega-3s, a lot of fruits and vegetables, tons of fiber coming from your vegetables and legumes, and high quality cuts of fish, meat, eggs, and some nuts and seeds. So when you're on this program for a while, what you can experience should be not limited to weight loss, reduced inflammation, reduced risk factors for cardiovascular disease, modulated stress hormones, increased energy levels, better sleep, and reduced cravings for sugar. So now I want you to pull out the document called the Back to Basics food list that looks like this, and we're going to go over some of the different foods that you can choose from, how much you should have of each, and some better options for maybe some of the favorite foods that you think you might be missing when you switch to a Mediterranean-inspired nutrition program. But I would like to emphasize that there truly are so many choices on this program. If you just come in with an open mind and you're willing to try new things, I guarantee we can find a recipe or something that will make, all these foods taste delicious. So just to kind of go over a summary of what we're going to be talking about on your food list, it's broken down into carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And you can think about replacing certain foods with other ones. So we're not necessarily, restricting anything. We're just finding better options for them. So when we're looking at carbohydrates, we're going to be replacing things like your refined grains. So maybe they're like white bread and biscuits, crackers, chips, cookies, baked goods, refined sugars, and desserts, and replacing them with non-starchy vegetables. So your greens, your cruciferous vegetables, some tomatoes and root vegetables, fermented vegetables, so maybe it's sauerkraut, pickles, kimchi, things like that, and then lower sugar fruits such as berries and green apples. And then you can also include things such as naturally gluten-free grains, which we'll go over, some fruit, and starchy vegetables. And so the moderate column is kind of based on what your goals are and what your starting point is. So some of you, maybe your goal is to lose that last 5 pounds. So you might have to be just a little bit more careful with what we're choosing from the moderate column if that's the case. But let's say this is the first time you've tried to adjust your nutrition and this is the first time you're really looking into healthy eating, then we probably have a little more wiggle room there. So next we have our fats column. We're going to be replacing things like those vegetable oils, corn, peanut, soy, not organic canola oils, trans fats that you'll find in processed foods, and of course fried foods. And we're going to have a huge emphasis on monounsaturated fats and omega-3 rich fats, so coming from avocados and olives and fatty fish and even some saturated fats from coconuts. And then we're also going to encourage you to have some polyunsaturated rich nuts and seeds. And then finally, for the protein, the best thing to do would be, we're going to replace your processed meats and cheeses. Don't have to completely eliminate cheeses, but having maybe a little bit less and keeping it a higher quality, and embracing things like fatty fish, eggs, some poultry, lentils, and beans, and then having a moderate amount of organic grass-finished red meat and organic dairy. And so we'll talk about this in more depth now when you pull out your back to basics food list, and we'll kind of sort through the columns and take a look. So in that very first box at the first page at the top, you'll see there's a list of vegetables there. So I do like to mention that there's no free lunch in nature. And what I mean by that is that just because these greens coming from, spinach, romaine lettuce, Swiss chard, kale, those are very nutrient-dense foods. They're very low in calorie, high in fiber. So sometimes we think, we need them at every single meal and snack. Let's throw them in our smoothie. Let's have them in a salad. Let's throw it in a soup. But there's also something called anti-nutrients in plant foods. So just like animals, plants have a survival mechanism as well. So there might be components to them that don't always react well in our bodies, or I should say our bodies don't necessarily react well with them. So that's not to say that vegetables are bad, but it is not a good thing to have the same vegetable all the time. So spinach, for example, is very high in something called oxalates, which you might not even notice it, but if you're having a heavy serving of spinach every day in your green smoothie, and then you're making a salad with it, and maybe adding it to your stir fry, that can be too much spinach. So when you look at that dark leafy green column, please make sure that you rotate those greens. So have some romaine lettuce in your salad. Maybe you saute some kale in your stir fry. Have some arugula instead of spinach when you're having, raw greens. So just an idea, keeping up with that variety is always an important thing. Next, you have a column of cruciferous vegetables. Those are really fantastic for detoxification and just very nutrient dense. Again, high in fiber. They're going to be really abundant this time of year. Your cauliflower and your Brussels sprouts. So take advantage of those. I know that we'll be incorporating them into a lot of recipes. But again, same principle here with the variety and rotating. Try to, if you want to buy one big batch from Costco during the week, then use it up. But then the following week, maybe you switch it to a different vegetable that you're really heavy on during the week. Then in the third column, you can see something called the nightshade vegetables. So some people do not have a problem with these at all. So if you don't have a problem with them, if you've never noticed a problem with them, then just ignore this. But other people, particularly ones who have autoimmune issues, digestive issues, usually have a problem with at least one of those vegetables in the nightshade family. It's also in chili powder, cayenne pepper, even certain herbs and spices. So if you notice a problem with nightshades, please reach out to Rebecca and me, and we can kind of walk you through how to test for that, either through an elimination challenge or through a different test. But for now, just take note if you have something from the nightshade family, maybe keep it to half a cup per day until we get you where you want to be on this program. And then finally, we have our starchy vegetables. These are great, especially if you are active and you want to stay active throughout this program. They're really rich in vitamins and minerals and fiber. They're, again, abundant during this season right now, great in soups and stews. So, take advantage of them, but be mindful of your portion sizes because they're more comparable to a starch than a regular vegetable when it comes to, carbohydrates and calorie content. So about a half a cup at a mealtime would be a great serving size to start with. Now in another column, you can see your fruit, or another row, I should say. So right before your vegetables, we have all the fruits that you can choose from. Really, there's no fruit that you can't have on this diet or on this program, but some that I would like to encourage you to go for more often would be your low sugar berries and things like green apples and citrus fruits. So those are going to be higher in fiber, really rich in antioxidants and vitamins and minerals. And a good starting point would be about a half a cup to 3/4 cup, or a small piece of fruit like a regular sized apple or orange twice a day. And now for the last section of our carbohydrates, I want you to turn the page or scroll down to the second page of your Back to Basics food list, and you'll find where the grains and other starches are. Now, I have two examples on here. One of them is the Ezekiel kind of sprouted seed bread. I think this is a really great alternative, especially if you have problems digesting wheat or if you have prediabetes or imbalances in your blood sugar, because this is a higher fiber, higher protein, very easily digestible bread compared to like your standard whole wheat or white bread. Now, the sprouting process, and I'll show some examples in our packet. There's a brand called True Roots that you can find at the local grocery store, but here you can find sprouted ancient grains like quinoa. You can also find sprouted legumes like lentils and mung beans, so your protein sources. But sprouting is a really, really great method to break down some of those anti-nutrients that I brought up earlier in the vegetable section. So we're breaking out that outer shell and releasing some B vitamins and making it a more absorbable form for your body, for your digestive system. So what I like to recommend are these ancient grains. So intact seeds like your quinoa, amaranth, buckwheat, wild rice. Those are all really great options because they're not taking the seed, grinding it into a flour, combining with other stuff, and baking it into a noodle or a bread. It's really the least processed form of this ancient grain. And sprouting it just takes it up another level when you have those digestive issues. So the Ezekiel brand is really good. The True Roots brand is another one that I highly recommend. And for the carbohydrates, about a half a cup serving at lunch and dinner would be a good starting point for most people on this program. We will, of course, make some adjustments to this based on the metrics that you provide us with in your initial health questionnaire. So now moving on to our next category of macronutrients. So back on your first page of the Back to Basics food list, you'll see a list of fats. Again, broken down into kind of emphasize, moderate, and limit. So what's different about the Mediterranean diet compared to, let's say, the standard American diet is that there is a higher amount of energy coming in from fat versus carbohydrates. So our protein's staying about the same. We're dropping our carbohydrates just a little bit and adding in some more high quality, healthy fats. So it does matter what type of fat that you are putting into your diet though. So I want to emphasize things like a high quality olive oil that you dress your salad, flavor your meats or your vegetables with. It's really important that you look at this chart that I'm showing you up here, and don't go above the temperature. Don't go above the smoke point on here because that's when you start to the fat will start to oxidize. You're not going to get any of the beneficial antioxidants and nutrients out of it that you were going for. So with that extra virgin olive oil, it has a lot of really great health benefits in it. Try to keep it to that lower temperature or just use it as a flavoring agent in your food. Another great one is avocado oil. So you can I like to roast my vegetables with it. It can cook at higher temperatures than your olive oil. And it's a really mild flavor. And again, giving you a high amount of those monounsaturated fats. And of course, the whole food of avocados and olives are great snacks or additions to your meal to make it more flavorful. There's also going to be a heavy amount of omega-3s that we want to push in this program. So coming from things like fatty fish, so your anchovies, salmon, sardines, whitefish. We'll see more of this in the protein section. You can also get some omega-3 fatty acids from, eggs if they're fortified with it. Even a little, I think some milks are still fortified with some omega-3 fats. And, a supplement wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea either. Some of the nuts carry it, like your walnuts, chia seeds, flax, hemp seeds are great sources of healthy fats. They're easy to use, and there's also a little bit of protein in them. And then finally, we have things such as butter and coconut oil that have more of the saturated fat content in them. And we're finding now that the saturated fat is not necessarily a bad thing to be having. But you can have, again, too much of a good thing. So it's probably better to be getting more of your fat calories from the monounsaturated omega-3, and then some saturated fats from coconut and from a grass-fed or butter that comes from the cows that are grass-fed and grass-finished. And then finally, we have protein. So again, when you're choosing anything from animals, quality does matter. So when we're picking our protein from, let's say, any poultry, eggs, meat, or dairy, it's very important that you get really the highest grade possible. So can you find an organic, grass-fed, grass-finished cow to get your meat from? Can you make sure that your eggs are organic, the higher quality as possible, because you're really getting a different product. So conventional meat is going to have a higher amount of omega-6 fatty acids versus omega-3. There's going to be more hormones, antibiotics, chemicals in those fattier cuts of meat. So one thing that I like to encourage is that if you are on a budget, or if you just can't find a good quality option, then get the leanest cut possible. That way you're avoiding some of these things that I just talked about with your with the wrong ratio of the omega-6 to omega-3 fats, those chemicals and hormones. You can prevent that by getting the leaner cut and then just topping it with a high quality fat like avocados or olive oil. So that way you can avoid the bad stuff while still getting your meat. Fermented dairy is another great source of protein. So things like your yogurt, kefir, a little bit of cheese, and make sure that when you're looking at yogurt and kefir that you choose unsweetened sources, but you're also getting some probiotics in there, so that's always a good thing. Fatty fish, we already went over that. So things like your anchovies, eel, mackerel, salmon, sardines, and whitefish. And if you can, get wild caught when possible, because again, these are going to be very different products when you're getting a wild versus a farmed or conventional type of fish. And then here's a picture of the True Roots. You can find this at the local grocery store. You can also buy it on Thrive Market or Amazon. And again, this is your sprouted version of things like beans, peas, and lentils that just make it so much more easy for your body to digest. So typically, for protein, just a really easy way to have a guide is about 4 to 5 ounces per meal. So like the size of the palm of your hand would be a really great starting point. But we're going to go over this in more depth right now when we build your template and talk about how to set your BMR and then your calorie level and then, kind of a protein carbohydrate guesstimate based on that. So, if you send your stuff over to us, we can do this for you, but this is the formula that we're using. And then, of course, we're going to reassess this and see what your goals are. So you can take your, weight in pounds, multiply that by the 4.536. Then you're going to go over and look at the other parentheses set, 15.88 times your height in inches. And then 5 times your age. And then once you get all three of those, you're going to go from left to right and add things together. So adding in your weight, the height minus the 5 times your age minus 161. So once you get that number, I want you to look at the activity levels. So sedentary, light exercise, moderate exercise. So those are the 3 that you can choose from. And then once you get that number, we're going to deduct 500 from that final number if your goal is weight loss. So when we did this in person, there were a few people that I bumped up. There were a few people that I bumped down based on this calculation. So if you do this yourself, I highly encourage you to just run it by me and Rebecca so we can make sure that it's going to be the right starting place for you based on your size, your activity, your goals, maybe your weight history. And once you get this baseline in calories, we're going to look at your how much you weigh in pounds, divide that by 2, and that's going to be the absolute bare bones minimum amount of protein that you should be having per day. So if you weigh 150 pounds, that would be 75 grams of protein per day minimum, and we might bump that up based on your calorie level as well. For carbohydrates, you're going to be consuming, again, those really high quality carbohydrates that we talked about and limiting those to about 125 grams per day to start with. And preferably kind of spacing those throughout the day and having them at times when you're a little bit more active and energetic. So having those carbohydrates more before your workout, before you're going to be going on a walk or going for a long period of time without eating. And then finally, we're going to fill the remainder of those gaps with healthy fats until you reach satiety. So, we're using this calorie count as a template, as a baseline, but when you fuel your body with high quality foods and you eliminate the processed stuff that has been made to be really addictive, then you can actually regulate how much you're eating without the counting, and that's just a very beautiful thing. But of course, portion control is still very important. And that's why we have a slide that is all about mindful eating. Now, I want you to visualize a plate, and this could be like a salad plate. It could be slightly larger than that, but this is a good starting point. And envision 3 different compartments on this one plate. Half of that is going to be filled with those non-starchy vegetables that we looked at in the very first row of your Back to Basics food list template. Then you're going to have 1/4 of your plate filled with a high quality protein. It could be one of those meat, fish, or eggs that we discussed, some of the sprouted legumes or beans. You could also even have something like a serving of kefir or an unsweetened full-fat Greek yogurt might be a good option for protein as well. And then in the other compartment that takes up 1/4 of your plate, you can pick one starchy, either fruit, grain, legume, or starchy vegetable. So maybe it's sweet potatoes or winter squash, parsnip, something along those lines. And then you're going to top that all off with a couple tablespoons of a healthy fat. So that could be like olive oil on your salad dressing. You could cook your vegetables in avocado oil, or you could use like a guacamole dip or something, or just snack on some olives. All be great choices for your fats. Now, when you sit down for your meal, you want to make sure that you put things on your plate. You don't just eat out of the container. Sit down, check your posture, make sure that your seat is you're comfortable there, your elbows are off the table. Check in with yourself, and that would be a really great time for you to take a photo and upload it over to Healthy so that we can review it in case you get stuck on something and you're just not sure why you're not reaching your full potential. That's a great way for Rebecca and myself to overview that. Now we're going to put all of this information into action. So now you can look at the recipe guide, the anti-inflammatory Back to Basics Mediterranean recipe guide that has been uploaded into your Back to Basics program, and you can view all the different recipes that are in there. So with that, always check the serving size, especially when you're making your grocery list. So there is a grocery list on there that takes into account every one of those recipes that's on the in that list, but you might not want all of those. But I would encourage you to try 2 different breakfasts, 2 snacks, 2 lunches, and 3 dinners that you grocery shop for this week. So hopefully the majority of your meals are going to be home cooked or prepared, at home before you take it to work. And trying new things can be intimidating at times, but it also makes the program a little bit more exciting and keeps things fresh. It keeps you trying, keeping up with that variety and rotation that we talked about earlier with the plant foods. So check out all the recipes, and a couple ways to easily substitute so that you don't have to run out to the grocery store for one thing would be, if you see that there's a night where you're having, let's say, chicken is in the recipe, but you don't feel like going out for it, but you do have turkey or fish in the house, then just try to swap out that protein for it, or even use like a lentil or legume in the recipe. That could work. Or if you don't have parsnips, but you have winter squash, that works too. So feel free to be flexible and swap out foods from the different sections that you see in your food list. And we will be uploading different weekly recipe plans every week, so make sure that you check that through the program. Now, finally, there is some other stuff that I think just adds in a little additional support to make sure that you're getting everything that your body needs, specifically for those of us women living up in Wisconsin where you don't get a lot of sunlight. Things like vitamin D are really important. Probiotics are really great for gut health, especially immunity this time of year. Omega-3 fatty acids are excellent anti-inflammatory agents. Also, bone broth is something that is a great thing to incorporate into your diet. So, you could easily just drink this in a mug, like sip on it, especially as it's getting colder outside, or make this the base of some of your meals. So make soups and stews and chilies with bone broth. I recommended a really great brand when we were meeting in person, which I will upload some of the recommended brands to another document for you to view on Get Healthy soon. But one of them I just found at the grocery store, and it comes in, I think, a 4-pack of little like powders, and you can mix that into hot water, which is a great kind of like emergency snack or fuel. It has 10 grams of protein and a lot of like immune supporting gut health, glutamine, which is an amino acid in it. Protein powder. These are just easy alternatives for breakfast if you're in a bind and you want some, want something that's filling and satisfying. Make a smoothie with a high quality hemp, pea, or whey if you can tolerate it, protein, and just make sure there's no added sweeteners, make sure there's no artificial sweeteners, and be mindful of what you're adding into that smoothie. So try to add in just a serving of fruit, a vegetable, and a healthy fat. And then last, I know this is unpopular, but we need to address the coffee and alcohol, because that can be a problem for many people that are trying to, really get to any health goal. So coffee is not necessarily a bad thing, but you can, again, have too much of it. And when you have too much of it, it can interrupt your sleep. It can throw off your stress hormones. It can make you store more belly fat and crave sugar. So try to stick to 1 cup a day. Don't put any sweetener in it. Maybe put in just a little bit of an organic cream. And you can also have different alternatives like teas, or Four Sigmatic is a great like mushroom blend that I love. I know it sounds funny, but it kind of tastes like a coffee, tea, warm drink. Really great properties, adaptogens in there. And then alcohol is another one that I would like to address. So not just from the calories that you're getting from alcohol, but the way that it inhibits our decision making. So you end up typically eating more. You also have to burn all that alcohol before you can burn anything else. So if you're consuming a couple drinks while you're eating dinner, just know that your body's got to metabolize that alcohol, and all that other stuff is just going to be stored where you don't want it. So try to keep the drinks limited. Maybe 1 or 2 nights a week you have 1 or 2 drinks, and see where that takes you. Some things that I like to do is just put seltzer water with mint or citrus into a wine glass. Kombucha is a really great alternative. One of the Urban Tonic products is called Slow Your Roll. Putting a dropper full of that into your, mocktail is a really great way to kind of have your mocktail and feel it too. So it's a really great just kind kind of way to suppress your central nervous system and kind of calm you down without making you sleepy. So that is about all we have for today. So hopefully you got something out of this presentation. Feel free to send me a message to ask any questions that you might have after, and some other goals that I would like to suggest for you to maybe add to your week 1 to-do list would be to focus on fluids. So make sure that you're getting a minimum in of about 64 ounces of water per day. Work on eating to satiety. Don't eat any more than that. Don't eat until you're uncomfortably stuffed. None of the mindless eating. Try to focus on documenting as much as possible so you hold yourself accountable. With that said, document unhealthy. Add your baseline metrics. So some of this might need to be done from your laptop or desktop because the mobile device doesn't allow you to add some of that stuff in. So just make sure that you're adding in your goals and your metrics. And then emphasize changing your breakfast and snacks first. So this is one of the easiest things that you can do that can have the greatest impact. So if you tend to have a bowl of sugary cereal in the morning, then take a look at some of the recipes that we've provided you with, or start with some, a couple of eggs and some sweet potatoes and a little avocado. It'd be a really great, satisfying way to start your day and sustain your energy levels. And then finally, read your emails. You should be getting about 2 emails per week. We have intake forms that were sent, and before week 2, please make sure that you complete your My Vision exercise. So if you have any questions, you can message us or just email at info@urbantonic.com. Thank you so much for your time.